and welcome to the Sprint 75 review. This was a standard 2-week sprint, and this is our last review of 2017. Next slide, please. So as usual, I'll go over the sprint statistics. John will give us an update on the community. Bronagh and Adam will update us on providers. Dina will update us on Automate. Greg Tanzillo on the platform side. Alberto on the API. And Chris on documentation. Next slide. So this sprint, we had 585 pull requests merged across 86 repositories. So that's almost 300 a week. Really quite a large number here as we're finalizing towards releasing Printashvili. Next slide, please. And there you see the graph. We had a drop-off last sprint, probably because of the Thanksgiving holidays. Now we're kind of back in regular mode. And you see that Sprint 75 is basically identical to Sprint 73 in the quantity. That's it. Next slide. All right, since we're trying to stabilize Printashvili, more than half of the pull requests merged were bugs. About a quarter were enhancements. 9% were documentation, and the rest were sprinkled around. Next slide, please. In terms of the health report, nothing significant to note here. Not many changes. So it's, in some sense, that's a good thing. As we're stabilizing, we're not destabilizing the health of the repositories. And I think John will be improving this report in future sprint demos. Next slide, please. And over to John.
Okay, so we've released the Printashvili, good thing I said it right, Beta 2. And also Zeta has contributed for the last week of ManageIQ, as well as Jillian last week. And we're filled out for this year and also for the end of January. And I've also had someone that stepped up for sometime in February. So we've been doing this for a year and a half, and it's really good. People who just step up and volunteer. And if I ask someone, they jump in. So I really appreciate it. Next slide.
All right, so for providers, I will share an update on the public cloud providers, and Adam will share an update on the infrastructure providers. Slide. So most merged pull requests this sprint came from the Azure repo, followed by Obert, and then OpenStack, and then a handful or two from most of the other provider repos. Next slide, please. So the public cloud provider team focused entirely on bug fixes this sprint. So I'd like to share an update on the more notable bug fixes. So for Azure, for event collection, we were getting the entire event from the provider, but Dan Berger optimized this to select only the properties that we actually use. So the event name, description, VMID, resource group, and a couple other properties. So this brings a 20% reduction in memory consumption, which is nice. And then on Azure metrics collection, there was a bug in the Azure Armrest gem where we were gathering a maximum of 1,000 records. So Dan fixed this, so now we gather all of available records in a given poll. And on the Amazon provider, the landing page reports were displaying the value unknown for guest OS and vendor. So Ladislav fixed this. And the network status was set to inactive across the board. So Ladislav also fixed this, which was a subtle but significant bug fix. Next slide, please. Over to Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Brennan. So for the infrastructure providers, Rev was mostly bug fixes backported to 4.6, but there was a cool enhancement to allow targeted refresh for templates. So now if you create a template, it will only do a targeted refresh and not have to do a full, which is a nice enhancement.
What's 4.6?
I'm sorry?
What's 4.6?
4.6? Oh, good British feeling. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
For VMware, Keenan refactored how we do connection to the broker from a Rails console, so trying to reduce the, I think there's a weird monkey patch in there where it would overwrite some method and it was causing some issues for him. So he added that over into settings. And for SCVMM, we fixed maintenance mode for hosts was always set to true, which was causing issues for auto placement for provisioning. It would basically never find a host because it was skipping everything that was possible. Next slide. Containers. So Benny finally culminated a really large effort to add tag mapping to the graph refresh strategy. It probably took about a month and a half and a lot of small PRs and a lot of refactoring of the existing tag mapping. There was a lot of custom stuff done in the existing save inventory method, so trying to get it working for graph refresh was a big overhaul, but he finally got that ready in this sprint. And Yakov had a number of fixes and also improved performance for Hocular metrics collection for OpenShift. And OpenStack, the most notable enhancement was all the refresh workers are now consolidated into one, similar to what we did with AWS. So this should help reduce memory usage as well as reduce any issues with race conditions where two refresh workers are trying to save the same object between the two refresh workers. And next slide. And from middleware, there's mostly bug fixes around EAP and wildfile servers not being shown in topology, some issues with live metrics, and just some general UI issues around there. They also got a couple of good enhancements. So now the middleware server group will be shown in the deployments list, and you can now filter in an advanced filter by middleware server for deployments. And next slide. And that's it for providers.
Good morning. Automate had 27 PRs merged this sprint. Lucy added the generic objects method removed from VMDB and exposed the generic objects association for services. Eric expanded the dialog runner support for custom buttons with the addition of 8 new object types. Madhu made a PR that logged encryption failures. This is really important because an encryption key mismatch causes EVM instantiates to silently fail. We spent a significant amount of time last week on a customer issue, which was exactly this case when, if this log message was there, it would have taken 10 minutes and the customer would have been resolved easily. Next slide, please. Okay, so Madhu and Harpreet made a really nice service catalog item editor change where that the types are available only if the provider is present, as you can see in the before and after. It doesn't make sense to let you go through and select a provider and start to create the catalog item type if the provider is named available. And that's it for Automate. Next slide, please.
Okay, on the platform side, mostly bug fixes for us. I'll go through some enhancements. So LJ made a change to add the unique set size when saving the process memory info. So we're looking at starting to use that maybe in the next sprint to measure the size of the workers for whether they hit thresholds or not. It's more accurate than what we're using today for PSS, which I think is the proportional set size, because that would include the shared memory that the worker inherits when it gets forked from the server process. And we're seeing that when the server process gets really big, then those workers also show that in their PSS, and they might get restarted when they really shouldn't. USS is unique to the worker itself, to the process itself. It's a better indication. That's definitely a step in the right direction. And Joe V added PR to handle OpenID Connect authentication on client protocol, and that's a step in the direction towards support for OpenID going forward. Thanks, Joe. And Jillian did a bunch of work to reorganize the supported consoles logic that we have. A lot of it was some of it was in the on the UI side. Push that down to the models, and so that it can be shared by both the Ops UI and the Service UI. And that addresses a bug that's listed down below where on the SUI, certain consoles are not working right because it's asking the API which consoles are supported, and now it's going to get the right answer. And on the bug fixes side, so Chris made a fix to classification seeding validation, which doesn't sound like much, but there are cases where the validation was failing for uniqueness, and it would prevent the server from starting, so it's pretty serious. And Yuri made a change to fix an issue with timeout checking on jobs that don't have target. Ansible playbook jobs fall into that category, and I don't think it was failing them, but it was getting a misleading message. It's just basically a runtime error in status. And Tim made a fix for on the report and expression generation for some ambiguity in the way we specify the class and an attribute versus class names with a dash, and if you had like VM dash test, you would think it was a class on both sides, and fix that as well. Probably more detail than you guys needed for that, but it was fixed. And the next one is the console one that I mentioned. And Bo made a fix in setting time zone through the appliance console. That's it for the platform. Alberto.
Thank you, Greg. So for the API, the team has been very busy this sprint with bug fixes, but we did manage to get a couple of enhancements in. First one by Andy, where we added support for deleting network routers, and that takes the standard delete action on the resource or the delete HTTP verb, as well as supporting bulk action delete on when targeting the collection. Next slide, please. Yep, we had another enhancement by Martin H, where we needed to support deleting tasks. So similarly, we have the delete action on the task resource, the HTTP delete verb, as well as the bulk action delete on the collection. And that's it for the API. Next slide, please.
Hi, for documentation in this sprint, we had 16 PRs merged, 5 of which were enhancements. The remainder were bugs. Some highlights there were we removed the master SAML processing URL. We added procedure on customizing help menu, updated the list of configuration options for the appliance, and added procedures for controlling power options for Rev VMs. That's it. Next slide, please.
All right, and with that, that brings our Sprint 75 review to a conclusion. The next sprint is early next year, January 3rd. It's a Wednesday. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone, and wish everyone Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you next year.